large part of our unseen world is hidden from our eyes by physical barriers. We think of water as being transparent, but consider 10 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by ocean, 2 miles deep on the average, 7 miles deep in spots. We can't see through it. We see only the surface. But underneath that surface is a world of life, the original world of life. It was perhaps 3 billion years ago that tiny bits of life first stirred in the ocean. It was only 300 million years ago that the first life forms, primitive insects, spiders, snails, a few stubby-legged fish, dared to venture into the hostile environment of the dry land. Even today, ocean life is predominant. The plants of the world convert the sun's energy into food and change carbon dioxide into life-giving oxygen. Something like 80% of all the food and oxygen used in this way is formed in the ocean. Where are the plants of the ocean? They are there, tiny microscopic pinpoints of life. The plant plankton present in uncounted millions across the surface of the ocean, crowded into the top 100 feet where the sunlight penetrates. Those tiny cells are the grass of the sea on which ultimately all other life in the ocean depends. Under the microscope, these minute plants take on a jewel-like appearance. They are so small that it takes hundreds of them to stretch across a single inch. But enough of them gather in 1 acre of ocean surface to weigh 5 tons. Though the plant plankton are consumed in enormous quantities, their eternally busy division keeps them ever present in endless numbers, the self-renewing grass of the sea. Not all the plankton are microscopic plant cells. Many are tiny animals that feed on the plant plankton around them. Even larger animals add to the plankton in the earlier periods of their lives. Sea creatures are born of microscopic eggs, usually near the surface, where they too must be near their food supply, the tiny plant plankton. When the eggs hatch and the tiny larval creatures emerge, they are themselves a food supply, for the rule in the sea, as on the land, is that the large eat the small, and the small make up for it by multiplying more quickly than the large. The animal life of the sea exists in wild profusion and in wide variety. There are wonders of weird beauty we never see. The water hides them. There are animals that look like plants, sea anemones with stalks and colorful petals. But they are not green. They make no use of sunlight. And the lovely petals are stinging tentacles that entrap other forms of life. There are slug-like creatures called nudibranchs that look like stalks of bananas. They are only 3 inches long, and what look like bananas are a breathing apparatus. There are worms with tufts of feathers like delicate crowns. There are sea creatures with their life substances so thinly spread They are transparent. There are other creatures simple enough to reproduce merely by budding. First one individual, then another breaks off from its parent. The object of life here is staying alive. Under the pressure of the drive for food, some sophisticated devices come into use. The anglerfish does what its name implies. It has a fishing rod and a lure attached to itself. The lure quivers like a worm. A small fish can be caught by something as primitive as a sea anemone with its poisoned, writhing tentacles, soft but deadly. It can be caught by something as advanced as a larger fish with streamlined shape that sends it piercing through the water and sharp teeth from which there is no escape. A crab flees from an octopus which coils in pursuit. A lobster is caught by a moray eel whose sinuous body can twist itself into a knot if that is necessary to hold its prey. A huge ray flaps its oversized dorsal fins like wings and flies through the ocean world like a graceful bird. Some of the largest whales and sharks and the manta ray bypass the normal food cycle of the sea and live entirely on enormous quantities of plankton. The ocean of water is not the only ocean on Earth. We ourselves live at the bottom of another one. It is the ocean of air, our atmosphere, which reaches for 100 miles and more above our heads. Plants shoot pollen or seeds into the air, making use of the wind as a highway to spread life. And with them are the particles sent into the air by man himself. Under the microscope, there is strange beauty and color in the fly ash, soot and dust that man's uncaring activity pours into the air. Beauty in deadliness, and artistry in death. For our lungs have developed over hundreds of millions of years to deal with relatively clean air. But look higher still, beyond the dust and toward the heights. Water vapor has been drawn up high into the air where it cools and forms clouds of tiny ice crystals. Sometimes the ice particles within a cloud collect, grow larger, and begin to drift downward. If the lower atmosphere is warm enough, they will melt into rain. If it is cold, the collected crystals will remain solid and will fall as snow. Under the microscope, each flake reveals a complex and symmetrical pattern of beauty, a frozen star with 1,000,000 sisters, each with the same six-sided symmetry, but different in detail. It is easy to believe that of all snowflakes ever formed, no two were exactly alike. And beyond the clouds, the vault of heaven, with the bright sun by day, at night the moon, the planets, the stars. For thousands of years, shepherds, travelers, and lovers have watched the night sky, counted the stars, and traced out fanciful pictures among them. No one dreamed they saw so little and left so much, so incredibly much, unseen. But the same lenses that can enlarge the small and make a speck of dust into a monolith can, in other arrangements, draw near the distant and make bright the dim. In 1609, the Italian scientist Galileo placed two lenses at opposite ends of a metal tube and pointed it at the heavens. He uncovered an unseen universe, far more vast and marvelous than the new worlds discovered by Columbus a century before. Galileo looked at the moon, and what had been a source of wonder and superstition became a world. It became a panorama of mountains and craters and dark expanses called seas, waterless seas of silence and dust. A strange world without air, without water, without life, brought closer to us, first by better telescopes, and then by more sophisticated rockets, until upon a magic day in July of 1969, men first stood upon a world not their own, and looked back upon a world Galileo couldn't see. Galileo also looked at the sun, protecting his eyes by letting the image flash through the telescope and onto the wall. He saw spots moving slowly along its face. Better instruments have shown us the sun's surface in detail, given us a vision of its marbled heat, and at its edge, against the black of space, the leaping, arching red of its giant flares that lift gouts of ruddy flame as far as 250,000 miles into space. To the naked eye, the planets looked like no more than bright stars. Through Galileo's telescope, these bright dots became recognizable planets. Mars, 35 million miles away at its closest, is a ruddy world with darker areas and with ice caps at either pole. Some astronomers thought they saw straight lines, which they called canals, and dreamed of intelligent life there. But in the 1960s, rockets whizzed close by Mars, took photographs, and revealed an empty world with no canals, little air, and craters as thickly strewn as those upon the moon. Venus is even closer to us than Mars, only 25 million miles away, and shows phases like the moon. Venus is closer than we are to the sun, and its surface temperature is far above the boiling point of water. There is the distant world of Jupiter, 11 times as wide as the Earth, nearly 500 million miles from us, with a great red spot whose nature is still a mystery to us. Saturn, somewhat smaller, nearly twice as distant, looked oddly lopsided in the first telescopes. Improved lenses showed it to be unique, for it had thin, flat rings circling its equator. In all the universe, nothing else like it has yet been seen. Beyond the solar system is the world of stars. Not merely the thousands we can see at best with the unaided eye, but stars by the hundreds of thousands, by the tens of millions, by the billions. 1,000,000 stars in a single globular cluster. 100 billion stars in a single spiral galaxy. Between the stars, clouds of dust and gas, bright like the Orion Nebula when lit by stars within that dust, dark like the Horsehead Nebula when there are no stars within and when the dust and gas block the light of the stars behind. Exploded stars, leaving the wreckage of their substance expanding outward for 1,000 years, as in the Crab Nebula. And all these stars together make up our own spiral-shaped galaxy of 100 billion stars. Looking through the long direction, we see it as the Milky Way. And beyond our own galaxy are other galaxies, billions of others. Farther and farther away lie the objects, millions of light years away, with each light year counting 6 trillion miles. How much farther does the universe stretch? Where does it end? Does it have an end? Or do the stars and the galaxies go on forever? As the world of the small may descend forever in narrowing spirals, does the world of the distant large ascend forever in expanding spirals? Do we stand in the middle, looking each way into endlessness? And will some of the universe always remain unseen in each direction, despite all we can do? We can only wonder and speculate, as we must with much of our world that is yet unseen.